Fit and Ten Nation, it is day 41, and I've got a different device here that I'm using to film myself, so it doesn't look exactly the same. Anyways, not that it matters, because the most important thing is my message to you. So, listen, I mentioned this yesterday, I'm going to mention it again. There is an early bird for the Spring Fit and 10 Challenge, so if this hasn't been enough for you already, there is another one coming up, and it starts exactly 2 weeks after this one ends. Okay? And if you do it, I'm just going to basically carry you right through. So you will have no gap. I will just keep carrying you right through and join you to the next one. So those 2 weeks that you have, you basically get a diet adjustment through there. Okay? But I do have an early bird. It's an instant $100 off. So I basically, what's happened right now is I have the price dropped. So the price that you see right now on our website, which is $4.99, is the price that it is up until Sunday evening. Okay? All right. There are no questions. Nobody has any questions for me, and but I could still dive in and get to a few, I'm sure. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about food of the day, more so, and that is broccoli. Okay, now broccoli is something that I have a lot of, as you probably know by now. I have about a bag of it from Costco a day, which is 2 pounds. I do go through that in about 24 hours. But there's a lot of benefits to broccoli. So I'll start with the basics. It's high in fiber and vitamin C and vitamin K. It's also high in a few minerals as well. Now, I don't know how, there's some debate, depending on how things are cooked, and potentially even how they're cut up. Yes, that's right, even how they're cut up, as to how bioavailable the vitamins and minerals are from them, from the broccoli. So, I can definitely say that if you cook it, I would think that they are going to be more bioavailable, but there's definitely some nutrition that gets destroyed. And I'll talk about something in particular here in a second in regards to that. But from what I understand, if you chop up your vegetables and you let them oxidize a bit, so you just let them sit, that is supposed to open up some of the nutrition. I read this some time ago. I can't remember what specific vitamins and minerals become more bioavailable, but it is supposed to help. And also, lightly cooking will help as well. But speaking about broccoli and more broadly cruciferous vegetables, so cruciferous vegetables, I have a list here of cruciferous vegetables, and they include kale, broccoli, of course, broccoli sprouts, Brussels sprouts, bok choy, pak choy, cauliflower, collard greens, watercress, radish, wasabi, and daikon. Some of these I actually don't even know. Daikon I'm not familiar with, so that's something I'll have to look into. I'm assuming some of these you probably can't even get at your regular grocery store. You probably have to go to like more of an ethnic style grocery store to get these items. Anyways, these are all cruciferous vegetables. I don't think this is an exhaustive list, but what all these have in common, well, there's a number of things that have in common. But one that's important is, and you may have heard this before, got to get this one right because I always want to say sulfuro, but it's not. It's sulforaphane. Sulforaphanes. And what happens is there's a compound in all of these cruciferous vegetables called glucoraphanin. Okay, and that with the enzyme myrosinase produces the sulforaphane. Okay, and these sulforaphanes are really important for turning on over 200 genes in the body that affect anti-inflammatory genes, that affect antioxidant genes, and affect genes that will help work against compounds that are toxic to your body. So this sulforaphane is supposed to be a compound that is very, very good for staving off the 4 horsemen of death, right? The ones that we talked about. Okay, do you guys remember what those are? Cancer. Okay, so listen. So let me just back up here a bit. The 4 horsemen of death. If we're talking about people over 40 who don't commit suicide and don't smoke, you are going. 80% of the people over 40 will die from cancer, neurological disease, like Alzheimer's, dementia, cardiovascular disease, or a cerebral vascular disease, so stroke or heart attack, basically. And then the 4th one is accidental death, okay, like car accidents and poisoning. Yes, that's right, poisoning. Or falls. Okay, that's a big one. Falls fall into that. So, aside from car accidents and falls and poisoning, this compound, this sulforaphane, actually has a profound effect on reducing all of these major causes of death. Now, it's not going to make you live forever, but it will prolong the onset of it. Okay, so this is, if you're thinking about your health, this is something you may want to think about. But here's what happens when you have cruciferous vegetables and you cook them. You destroy this enzyme, myrosinase. And myrosinase is needed to convert the glucoraphanin into the sulforaphane. Okay? But here's something that I found out today, actually. If you have mustard seed with your cooked cruciferous vegetables, you will be able to turn on myrosinase. That's right. So very interesting. So what a lot of people do that know about this is they just add this to their cruciferous vegetables. So there you go. I've just prolonged your life by, who knows, 10 or 20 years. That's right. You can thank me. So I'm going to start doing this because I cook my broccoli, and I don't cook it the best way. I don't steam it. I actually kind of boil it, right? So it's probably the worst way of doing it because I would think the water probably seeps stuff out of it. But anyways, something for you to know, all right? So I'll read that again to you guys. Okay, so cruciferous vegetables again. Well, I guess you guys can rewind it. I guess I'm just going to be repeating myself. Okay, let me go a little bit more into the science without being too sciencey about this, okay? I'm going to read my notes here because this is, I don't have this memorized. So basically what happens is this sulforaphane stimulates something called an NRF2 pathway, okay? So pathways in the body are basically just like, they're like cascades of metabolic processes in the body, okay? That basically run down to the cell and affect the cell. And this pathway that gets affected, or I shouldn't say affected, gets stimulated, goes on and turns on these 200 genes that I mentioned. Okay, these genes that essentially stave off the 4 horsemen of death. All right, so now this is all relatively new findings. When I say relatively new findings, like within the last 4 or 5 years. So maybe it's blown out of proportion. I'm not sure, but something interesting that you may want to know is they've exposed breast cancer tumors to sulforaphane, like directly to sulforaphane, and the cancer cells literally, they shrink right up. They I don't know what word you want to use. There's a scientific word for this, but they shrink. Okay, they basically like dissolve into themselves. So what researchers did at Johns Hopkins University, this is really, really interesting, is they had a bunch of women that came in, or they took a bunch of women that were getting breast reductions, and they had them have a bunch of sulforaphane type compounds. Well, okay, I should back up here a little bit. There was a correlative data to suggest that people who had more cruciferous vegetables had less chances of developing cancer, in particular breast cancer, and it was quite staggering. Okay, so what they did is they had women that came in for a breast reduction. They didn't have cancer, but they came in for a breast reduction, and they had them drink a very high sulforaphane type drink before. I think it was within hours of their surgery. They did surgery on them, and they measured the sulforaphane levels in their breast tissue, and they had a group obviously that didn't do this and a group that did, and to their surprise, there was an elevated amount of sulforaphane in the breast tissue of the people who took in that vegetable drink, so that cruciferous vegetable drink. So very, very interesting. It sounds like a bit hokey, but this is coming from Johns Hopkins University. So, and it was a pretty well run study from what I understand. So very interesting to know, right? Okay, message of the day. I like this one actually. Time flies, but you're the pilot, right? Time flies, but you're the pilot. You are in control. You have the choice of doing whatever it is you're going to do in your life. So just remember that you are in control, and without overwhelming you by saying this, because sometimes it can be overwhelming because you're thinking like, just create some balance in your life, but take control. Have a plan. Take control. And move towards the things that you want to. You have full control. You have more control, aside from death, right? Eventual death. We have more control in our lives than I think we lend credit to. So just remember that time flies, but you are the pilot, so you can make the choices. Ultimately, I realize that this sounds pretty obvious, but we tend to forget this, that life is just just a bunch of choices, in a row. Essentially is what it is. So, think about that and be very conscious of the decisions that you make and the usage of your time. All right? Time flies, but you are the pilot. Remember that, okay? All right. This Saturday, 10:15, we have a class, right? So come on out and join us. All right. Any questions regarding this, let me know. I'm going to look a little bit more into this because, like I said, I didn't know about this, so I'm going to find out a little bit more about that, about the mustard seed and the activity of sulforaphanes. I hope that was interesting for you guys, and I will talk to you guys all soon. Eat your broccoli or, all your cruciferous vegetables, right? Kale, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, wasabi, daikon, bok choy, etc., etc. I'll talk to you guys all soon. Have a wonderful evening. See you guys.